What's up, man?
I don't even know if I can talk or not. I gotta try to talk, but the mic's muted, so it's like, oh, Eli is like the passive aggressive dude. So if he wants to make his dominance known, he doesn't like challenge me to a joust. He just doesn't unmute my mic until like he talks first.
That's what happens when you put the passive aggressive guy in front in charge of the buttons here.
Speaking of jousting, I was at the Renaissance Festival this weekend.
How was that?
Like it was 30 years ago.
It's fun, man.
It's cool. It's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it was fun because like we went with family. We took Cash and Chloe there, and went with Kate's family. And no, it was cool, man. It's cool to like let the kids kind of see. Some of the gypsies creep Cash out.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting, like kids' intuition.
Oh yeah.
If that's what it's called, right? Because
yeah, they're
it's
good
like,
at
some things he's like happy and running around and like. Some like gypsy like weighs jewelry in his face and he just gives him like this look. It's so funny, dude.
Smart, man. Smart kid.
It was fun, man. Had a good time.
Yeah, good.
Hence my jousting reference. I'm not that creative.
My lord.
I just dude, they say that stuff. It's like you're buying something, like
yeah.
buy a drink, like what would you like, my lord? Like, dude, just give me the fucking drink.
See, now the one guy
they have to be in character.
The one guy that does just give you the drink and he goes, "No problem, bro." You're like, "Hey, dude, I paid like $20 to get in here."
What's up, man?
Yeah.
What's up? Look at my jewelry, man. I'm a lord, right? Like knuckleheads. But it was fun, man. It was a good time and just talking trash.
Always.
Fun one today, man. We're gonna be talking about start a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Is that what we're gonna title it, or is that? I don't know if that's.
We'll have a more creative. We'll have a more creative title, but
you'll have a more.
But essentially, yeah.
So we want to talk to you guys today, you entrepreneurs, whether you're real estate or doing other stuff. I know we have a pretty large real estate following because we do real estate. By the way, I'm just gonna plant the seed now to give Eli more homework. We are going to be starting a real estate podcast that's real estate specific that literally covers everything we do. We've been doing it on YouTube. I know a lot of folks love podcasts, real estate podcasts, get listened to a lot. Just, folks have good content out there. We're just going to jump in that mix. And we always have a lot to say, and we're trying to figure out like what platform to put it on and how we do it and whatnot. But it's like, man, we're already talking a lot about it. We thought about doing it on this podcast once a month, but man, it wouldn't even come close to like actually covering everything we would want to talk about. And then some of the real estate guests that we would have on. So we're going to be building a real estate specific podcast. There will still be a ton of nuggets in there if you're not real estate on how we've built our back ends and our systems and processes and how we've scaled our brand. That yes, it would still be beneficial for you guys if you're trying to learn social media and YouTube and relationships and leadership. There's going to be a ton on there, but yes, it will be specifically in a category of real estate, but we'll be marketing it here so you guys know where to find it if that's for you. But today, let's talk about people ask, like, hey, do you guys optimize your channel? Like, we don't have any sponsorships, right? Like, we don't, and it's not that we haven't been offered sponsorships. Like, our podcast is significant now, and we're proud of where it is as far as, like, views and things like that, and cool. And, hey, shout out to Andy Frisella and Sal Frisella. Like, you and I jumped up, like, 400% after being on that podcast. Man, I think we went to, like, 30,000 views or downloads.
Well, that's a good topic of conversation for later, too.
We're going to get into that, right? Now, I want to keep this to, like, 30, 45 minutes, or 30 minutes, so we're not taking too much of you guys' time, but or our time. It's probably more our time. We got clients to go help and shit. I'm trying to be nice. We got shit to do, everybody.
Yeah, someone listening is like mowing the lawn right now. Like,
like, what are you talking about, bro? Hey, if you're mowing the lawn, mow my lawn. I need to be mowed. Digressing. Listen, I'm just in a great mood today, and it's been a little while since we've done our own without a guest, but we want to talk about, like, yes, we have optimized our podcast.
Monetized
our podcast, and let's kind of dive into just some context on how it all started, where the idea came from. And then what do we mean by, you guys haven't monetized? Like, you don't have sponsorships. You don't have we're going to explain it, and it's the same way you should be doing yours, and it's just the way you've got to see business and relationships, and you've just got to see things from different angles and actually how one thing feeds another and how you scale your business. But context, Eli, letting you speak. Why don't you start us off, man, with, like, where the idea came about, where we started it, where we kind of first got that vision.
Yeah, so I would say, man, I've always been into podcasts, right? Always been into podcasts in the sense of, like...
Is the camera on you?
It is on me.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. I know all my buttons are down here, and it's all, like, low-key.
Eli's got this, like, low-key shelf below the desk, so he's, like, always playing below the desk, and it's super distracting.
So, always loved podcasts. Always wanted a podcast, but had a healthy respect for them in the sense of, like, first of all, self-awareness. I know I'm not going to carry a podcast solo for an hour, right? No desire to either. Even if I just don't.
I appreciate you saying
how
that.
I roll.
Because we have some close friends, and they're always like, "Oh, Eli's brilliant. Eli, like, shut the fuck up." And I was like, "Oh man, like, yeah, just got great questions." And someone's like, "Hey, Like, oh, you should let him talk more. Like, dude, you should have more context on the relationship. Like, if you guys only knew how much Eli doesn't want to fucking carry it.
Yeah, no.
But dude, and they don't mean any harm by it. I'm obviously I'm like beefing up my jokes right now just to be funny. I'm not cussing my friends out. Nobody means, but it's funny when people tell me like, oh man, he's just brilliant, super sharp guy. It's like, hey, you know who else is brilliant? The fucking guy who's given all the ideas and vision to like putting everything in Eli's car to do in the first place.
They only say something because you already have the spotlight.
But dude, it pisses me off.
So
man.
what they're doing, they're throwing a little spotlight my way. That's all.
And it's cool because it's warranted. But like, dude, it's so like, I'm being funny. It's not bothersome, but it's like so ironic. And like every once in a while, there's a couple guys we have around us that I super respect.
Shout out to you guys.
And I don't hear it. And it's like, hey, do they think because like I'm in the spotlight so much, or that, you know, like because of my personality, maybe they think I'm like overly confident or something, that
they
like,
think you get it enough. Yeah.
I'm a word of affirmation guy.
Yeah.
But I'm also like weird because it's like 1,000 people could say something to me and it wouldn't matter. But there's a couple people that I really respect. Like when they say something to me, no man, it matters. Like for example, when you and I were talking and you were like, dude, I would listen to your podcast even if I wasn't on it. That was just a huge compliment from you, you know? But it's like, yeah, man, I always hear, because people, like, when they get around, it's like, oh, man, Eli's like brilliant. Oh, man, like, you know, like, oh, you let him talk more. Like, oh, you let him. It's like, dude, he doesn't want to.
Yeah. Well,
he doesn't.
And here's the thing. That also came with a lot of years of trying shit and learning myself. If podcasts were what
Eli
they were
ran
now.
his dick in the dirt for like 10 years before Will
If podcasts were what they are now, when I was 20.
Yeah.
I probably would. And if we started one together, I probably would be like, hey, can I fucking talk more?
Yeah.
Until I would talk more. And then I'm like, oh, shit, this is hard. So that came with like, man, 15 years of like trying to make video and do like fitness video and just realizing like, man, this is not.
Well, and you
like
talk, you do talk more on like the podcast and like, especially when we have a guest, I actually, man, I tone it down a lot and let you converse with them. But I think it's more so like when they just see our business, because the close friends I'm talking about, like they just see more of us, and it's like, hey, Eli has no ambition to go drive and network and do like what I do. He's really good at what he does, and he fucking loves it. And as much ego as people might think that I have, there is zero ego with you and I. Like you're like, nope, that's your lane, and for me, I'm like, nope, that's yours, and we help each other out because we both can do each other's lane and we contribute to it. But yeah, digressing, man. It's just like, dude, certain guys, and I think they like do it just to beat me up on purpose. Man.
Yeah, they do.
It's like,
yeah, they do.
Oh,
100% they do.
It's everybody just using like these super heavy words.
So that being said,
yes, San Francisco.
That being said, well, prior to that, man, the fucking week we started working together, and I was just getting around Will a little bit. I'm like, here it is. This dude needs a podcast. I can figure out how to run a podcast and put it together. Like, we got to do this, right?
Yeah, we didn't actually do it until like 2 years later. But
Yep. Yeah. We kind of waited until we really had some stuff to say. And I remember we had talked about it early on. I'd mentioned, man, you need a podcast, you know? And then it was kind of a comment of just something like, yep, hey, let's do some shit. Let's get some shit to talk about.
Yeah, I remember you bringing it up.
And then we'll get it rolling.
And I remember you kind of elaborating, and I was like, hey, man, let's just keep diving into what we're doing. We'll have material, we'll have content to talk about, but I don't, one thing that I didn't want to do is like, I didn't want to be super guest heavy where we're reliant on a guest to have content, because now we're a commodity. Because then people are only listening because you have such and such guest, but they can find those guests everywhere, especially when you're up and coming. Like, who are you going to get? That just is only on your, like, it's just not going to happen. Right. So, and I just felt like, man, like, let's, I think that's the Marine Corps in me. Because, like, whether you wear a certain rank or not, you're respected amongst your peers and your subordinates by if you're actually a good dude and you know your shit. So for me, it was like, man, I wanted no conversation about anything running my mouth to anybody outside of you and I and our team until we were successful. And, we hit top 1% worldwide for our team for Berkshire Hathaway and crushed that. And I think that's when, like, I got more open-minded to, like, hey, man, top 1%. In the world for Berkshire, like, respectable. Yeah. It's not the best in the world. Like, there's other guys doing more. But it was respectable to, like, hey, man, not only did we hit that in a year. So it's like, hey, cool, we're on to some cool things. And I was a little bit more open-minded to, like, bring a little bit, a couple more people to the team. And, yeah, hey, maybe it would be okay to have a conversation or start speaking on some stuff, because we have some things where it's like, hey, with integrity, this is what we're doing. And we have real evidence that it's working. And
that's honestly the right way to do it. Like, I can't remember who it was, whether it's Lewis House or it was somebody. Might have been Gary Vee, one of those guys. Basically stated, hey, if people aren't listening, if you're having to try to get people to listen to you,
Yeah.
if people aren't listening to you, you haven't done enough. Like when you go out and you do and you accomplish enough things, you're not gonna have to beg people to listen to you.
You're also not going to have to scratch for content.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we could talk all day about real estate or business or brand building or influence or leadership because, man, I've been exposed to amazing leadership, for the past 16 to 20 years, right? Like whether it was, military to government work to police work, man, I've been blessed with a lot of great, people that have been around us and that poured into me, which I felt made me a respectable leader. And then years of being in that full time gave context. And then that translated into like, let's build a business. I correlated all the leadership skills here into our team. Our team crushed. So it's like, it's not hard to find topics of discussion when you fucking bleed this.
When you're when you're accomplishing things and you're really finding success in what it is that you do. So what finally like tipped the scale for us to take action and move forward and actually start it, we'd gotten invited over to Greg McDaniel's podcast, Real Estate Uncensored, which I'd been listening to since even prior to being a real estate agent. So that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I like that dude.
We had a guy in our network on our team.
He made an intro. But there are a couple guys in real estate specifically.
We were going to be on Zoom, right? That's typically a Zoom one. But I was the one that was like, hey, let's go out in person.
Right.
And like, hey, some could see that as a waste of time. And maybe so. Maybe for you. For me, it's not because I like to just absorb myself into an environment. And I wanted to see, because we had kind of mentioned our own podcast before, like we've mentioned, but then, hey, now this is our first time going on a podcast. It's a pretty large podcast for the real estate world. And I'm like, when I absorb myself into an environment, my perception, my lens, everything changes, right? Like no smoke and mirrors. Hey, this is a respectable podcast. I want to go see what this is all about.
Yeah. Well, and why that also ended up being very beneficial was because when we went out to see him, like he didn't have a studio. He does podcasts out of his house.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
When you Zoom, you only see so much. But I'm like, this is a respectable podcast.
Yeah.
I want to meet the people doing it. I want to see the environment. I want to see how well they hold content. Like I was there to do what we would call in the Marine Corps reconnaissance. Eli.
Yeah.
We were on a recon mission, high on ecstasy. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh Jesus!
Forgot
about that.
We can't not talk about that. Eli forced drugs down my throat and laughed at me. But I wanted to get out there and do some recon on these guys, and because it's like, hey, this is a respectable podcast, which means they're doing something right. I want to see. We go out there. Great time. Greg's a great dude. Real Estate Uncensored, great podcast. But no studio, no anything. They were running it off their laptops and had microphones.
Well, here's why that was important. They didn't have any extra shit for us.
No.
He was like, yeah, if you guys want to come, but you got to bring your own gear.
Yep.
And we were like, oh shit, okay.
Yep.
So, we didn't have the mics that we have now, but it was like, okay, let's figure out what this is. So we go there and we took a bunch of shit. Half of it didn't even work when we got there.
Eli.
Yeah.
Half of it. Eli is just that serial entrepreneur that's like he was in a band.
I know how to use Google. That's it. That's
but you also understand like audio and stuff from being in a band.
A little bit, but even at like just figuring out, hey, Google, how to do a podcast.
Because here's the thing, I'm trying to give you credit, but because all of my close friends already give you so much credit, you won't even take it from me.
Which is why they give it. It's all a
guys.
trap. It's all a trap.
All a trap. Remember that game Mousetrap?
Yeah.
Yeah, only you die at the end of this one. You know what I mean? I cook that rat.
People are going to be saying I'm great. Oh, Eli, he was just fantastic.
You're going to get some love mail now because Will's going to kill you.
I know. But essentially what that did, man, I remember after that and we were like, hey,
what the hell
was easy.
That?
These guys did it. we can do that.
Well, and half of us like hooking it up was like you helped them figure out how to add us to the podcast in person. We did it in like the back half of a lobby at the hotel we were staying in San Francisco. And it was fun because, Fat was still on board back then and
he was our
videographer and doing stuff and we had been grinding, dude. So it was fun to just get out for a couple of days and kind of decompress. Like we just had babies, we've been grinding our business. It was cool to go for 2 days and just see San Francisco, but then just get eyes on this. Like, oh man, you guys are awesome dudes, but this ain't rocket science. Like, not only do I think we could do it, I think we could do it better.
And our demeanor on camera was real good and stuff,
But I just seen their setup. It was like, man, I think once you saw it, it's like, okay, now I've got some perspective on like how this actually goes down. Because if all you're doing is watching Joe Rogan, you're like, I don't fucking know like what kind of studio that is. And we start diving into Joe Rogan's. He's like, yeah. Until like 2 years ago, I had it in my basement.
Yeah.
He just built out a little thing in his basement. Like, cool. And So it gave me some context and some vision, on how to do it. And yes, Eli gave me ecstasy while we were there.
I did.
Very interesting.
I did. Yeah, it was like, man, very rarely do we get opportunities to socialize, and not only do we not
Eli
we
is
don't
a
take opportunities,
drug connoisseur.
No,
like just exploration of it.
I like exploring. Yeah, I like exploring.
I'm not calling you a loser.
Yeah, but a connoisseur would be. I wouldn't give myself the credit to call myself a connoisseur.
Of course not. You know why? Because you're so brilliant and everything else
so
that my
humble.
friends call you. You would not, you pretentious fuck. God, people don't even know. He eats pears. Listen to me. Eli eats pears. If you don't think that's
pears are the greatest fruit.
If you don't think that's not pretentious,
it's like a juicier, softer apple. Who would not eat a pear?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Next time you're at the store, grab a damn pear.
Won't happen.
Problem is, they're hardly. Never mind. I'm going on a fucking pear rant right now.
So but you like the exploration and the education behind narcotics and stuff, and I'm not against it, man. Like, but just being in the military and government work and police work, like, especially police work, the drugs you see, man, are heroin and crack, and marijuana, but just not from a good realm, because anybody getting in trouble with those drugs, man, they're addicts. And I'm not saying it's their fault that they're an addict. Like, I know we can dive in psychologically to, well, you made the decision to take drugs, so it's your fault you're an addict. Like, like it's very easy to say that, but a lot of addicts don't like that they're an addict, but they get caught up in it, man. And when you see it from a cop's lens, man, it pains you to see people in certain circumstances, right? So, and we'll go down that road another day if it's ever, valuable content. But the bottom line is that was my lens. When I get out of this world, when I get out of the military stuff and government and police world, I get into the other world. It's like recreational use of things wasn't even in my realm. So like when you started talking about how you use marijuana and CBD and different things, and you talked about your experience with ecstasy before, it's like, oh man, that's like super cool. And I'm open-minded, man, and like, you kind of spoke about it, and I'm like, dude, am I gonna be talking to myself and like doing weird shit? And you're like, no, dude, you're just gonna be super happy, and you'll kind of be a little bit lower on the dopamine the next day, but all good. And
it was a good little like intro to. I just
remember like first of all, you did something super wrong in my opinion.
What's that?
You talked me into it. So okay, fine. So you and I and Fat were in the room. I can't remember if Fat took it or not. He can speak for himself since he's not here on the podcast. Hi, Fat. But I remember, like, right when we were, like, taking the pill, like, drinking it, right when I swallowed it, you hadn't taken your pill yet, and you just fucking laughed at me, and you were like, buckle up or some shit. And I was like, dude.
See you later or something like that.
No, something like
See
that.
you on the other side.
And I was just like, dude, shut up. And then I was like, nah, I'm not going to. I'm like, dude, I'm probably that guy that doesn't feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, don't feel it. Like, nothing, right? And I'm like, hey, do I feel it? Hey, Eli, do I feel it? And you're like, dude, and I'm like, no, man, ain't gonna happen. Like, maybe I'm just a guy that, like, doesn't respond to it. And I remember, like, I had to take a deuce. So I go to the restroom, and I'm, like, hanging out, and then, like, grab my phone, and I look at my phone, and, like, I can't remember whose text message I was reading, but it was like laser, dude. It was like sticking out of my phone. And I was like, I feel it. That's here.
You call it 4D or something?
I was like, God, I feel good. And like, I just remember like, man, like I felt like strong and like happy. And I remember like I was walking out of the hotel bathroom, remember? And I accidentally ran my shoulder into the wall a little bit. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. I was like, boom. I was like, dude, I could remodel this place. I could take this wall down.
Holy
but
shit.
I wasn't like angry.
No.
It just not. Like, man, like I probably could have knocked my shoulder out, dude.
No, that wall would have gone before your shoulder broke.
But it was
your shoulder would have been fine.
And so we just stayed in the room the entire. We were responsible adults. We didn't go to raves. We didn't go anywhere. Not that that's irresponsible, but I'd never taken it before. And it's like, man, I'm not down for that. So we just stayed in the hotel room the entire time and like
talked, hung out,
said a bunch of nice shit. I remember I had that hotel blanket on me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was stuck in
those super fuzzy blankets that they'll have on the bed.
Yeah, it was like heavy.
In the random closet in a hotel, they'll have like the heavy blanket that goes in there. Yeah, Will was wearing that like dude, it was cape awesome all night.
Yeah, but it felt like, oh man, it just felt amazing. And I remember like I had to go to the bathroom again, so I laid it on you. And you were like, oh, man, you've been feeling this the whole time. Like, I remember that.
It was like 3 hours you had that on. And then I was like, oh, my God.
It was amazing. But it was cool, man. And I'll be honest with you, man. Like, I don't get peer pressured for anything. But I wanted to like explore your world. You know, like you were a really close friend for me. Like now we're even closer, right? But like, you know, you were a really close friend of me, dude. We just had babies literally at the same time. We're growing this business together, and like
it was our first like trip out of state.
Right. Yeah. And like you used narcotics before, but you were so into like the expanding your mind and just certain epiphanies you get with it. It was never like, yeah, I'm just going to party and get fucked up. It was never that. Not that you can't use it for that. I'm sure you can, but yours was always from like a productive stand. And like, man, that just threw a curveball at me. But the reason why I was okay with it was like, man, like you believe in me so much and like what we're doing, and you're kind of like accepting some of my leadership attributes and style of like how to run a team, and you're kind of like trusting in me. It's like, man, I just wanted to like pay that forward to you, and like, man, like just try what the guy does, you know. And it's not that it's not like you do it every day, but it was like, man, like I just want to, hey man, just try it out, like just go to his world a little bit and just, man, have a little bit of fun.
Well, that was huge, dude. And for me with that drug in particular, man, it's like there's 3 people in my life I've ever wanted to do that with, and that was my wife, my friend Michael from back in the day, and then you. Like I said, and I'm like, oh man, and for me, it's like selfishly, like I just wanted to connect with you on that different level that other people just, and there's a different level of connection when you do that with somebody and you spend a night with somebody, and
but you don't know what you don't know. Like when it's coming from my lens, like I didn't know.
No, that was a complete leap of faith.
Yeah, well, I trusted it because I trusted you, and it's like, hey, man, we're not going anywhere. I'm not going to be partying all night and then drowning myself in water or something weird. It's like, no, dude, like we didn't take a big dose or anything like that. Like,
no, it was one pill, and you're 270 pounds at the time.
Yeah, it was 274. Yeah, one pill, like it was, but it was enough to like just have some fun with it, and no, but it was cool, man. Like we bonded, and it was more about just again wanting to kind of explore your world and. You know, back to podcasting, right? Like,
I think we actually talked about the story on our very first podcast, I think.
We might have.
And I'm like, oh, wow, first podcast. We're talking about Eli doing drugs.
Right. Well, it is fun, but it is okay to like talk about some things recreationally.
I wish more people would talk about it because honestly,
dude,
here's the thing, when you get into this world and you start kind of like talking to some very, very, very successful people, some of the most successful people are like, oh man, yeah, they're all about it. And it's like, it's this underground world
and
where
we know them.
100%.
There's some of them that we know. And like, I think it was Grant Cardone or somebody was like, there's a guy he's a quarterback and he's won multiple Super Bowls, told me about his mushroom trip on the beach after the Super Bowl.
Yep.
It's like, I won't tell you who it was. Like, well, fucking narrow it down. Who's got multiple Super Bowls? And you start thinking Tom Brady, dude.
Oh, him all day.
Oh, man. Right? But he's like, but he wears like the nice pose and he's got the family you'd never expected, but maybe he uses it in a productive way.
Yeah, some life-changing experience on the beach. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, you know, so kind of getting, and we'll get into Diesel Day because then I drug you to my world. And well, that's not my world. That's Brian Shantosh's world.
It's your world.
I come from, I'm not an endurance athlete. I'm not a 24-hour.
Not the endurance side, but that mindset.
Well, it hadn't been my world for a long time, and it's still not my world. I did one event, right, and it was 24 hours, and it was awesome. And Brian Shantosh throws such a good event for that. But I wanted to like just go revisit some of that for myself, man, because I felt like I needed to make some improvements. I needed to feel it. So I drug you into that. So that was like your camaraderie with me. Like, all right, I'm going to go do this 24-hour physical endurance challenge. Like, right? Yep. But you crushed, and that was a great experience. But a lot of this, man, like a lot of like the just going to that podcast and experiencing like that environment to see what was possible, having an experience with you, man, that's such a win-win, right? And then so we get home and it's like, cool, well, let's start figuring this out. Like, yeah, you know what? I think we do have content. And hey, do we have guests? We don't have guests. And I was like, no, man, I want to go like the first year or first couple months of like no guests, because if we have a guest, I want to be locked on. Yep. It's got to be smooth. I don't want it to be how it was when we were on. I want it to be smooth. And it wasn't McDaniel's fault. We came in person. That's not what they do. They accommodated us. Yeah. So it's not that they were unprepared. We changed it up on them. But we wanted to do guests in person. So we were just going to have to be prepared for that. And I also want to make sure, like, hey, if someone's coming on, we're dialed in. Secondly, I want to make sure that we're holding our content and we're committed to this and we're doing it. And, you know, so, yeah, dude, you started Googling. Like, you saw Jocko's and Joe Rogan's, and they have some posts where, like, they showed some of their gear and equipment. And, like, dude, you Googled it and you figured it the fuck out.
Yep. That was it. So for you guys listening, we do have gear lists and stuff like that now, because that was something that we could not find that easily. So if you guys are listening and want to know our gear list, I've got lists already put together for you. So feel free to reach out for that.
Yeah. You know, and then so we started holding our own content and just kind of like, and I think like when you're first starting, man, you just got to find like, you know, what's your vibe, what's your flow, like what's your show kind of stand for, and how do you want to run with it, and had some fun with that, and like just started creating content. We're doing twice a week, and then our real estate company simultaneously was growing as our podcast was growing just as rapid, right? So we had to cut it down to like once a week, and yeah, we'd miss, you know, every once in a while here and there, but you know, for the most part, these past couple of years, we've been pretty committed to it, you know, at least once a week.
One thing I want to point out, and this was when, I just really want to hone in on this because you and I were really good at speed, right? From conception to physical product. You and I are very, very good at speed. But what we will not falter on is quality. But we also don't let it hold us up, right? Yeah. So for us, like coming out of the gate, we knew from like how our podcast sounds right now, it's very professional, it's very crisp and clean.
It's always been.
That's how it sounded episode 1. So for you guys listening, if you're thinking of starting a podcast,
right,
do not cut that corner first, but also don't let it hold you up.
No, just put the coin in, sell some shit out of your basement or whatever, or figure it out, but just spend a couple $100 more and just get the right stuff. But yeah, don't take an extra year saving money to do it. Find the money. You can find the money. Sell some shit, do another deal, whatever you have to do. Or like, and man, the money we spent was a couple grand, right?
If that.
Like
$1,500. Honestly, if you were doing audio only because we have cameras, because again, we wanted to do it right, in our opinion, out of the gate.
Yep.
But most podcasts don't have video.
So less than $1,000.
Most, like Joe Rogan's, though, like a lot of the top ones now do because of Joe Rogan, but you still don't need that.
Yeah,
you know?
so like
you're in this under $1,000 for audio.
Yeah. So, but you're right, man. Like the speed of like, hey, we made that decision and then we're committed, so we figured out how to do it. And then, you know, while you were figuring that out, I was like, cool. Like, well, what do I feel I should be speaking to? And then I started jotting down like the first 30 episodes of what we wanted to speak to, and like something that we've always done. Yep, it's long form content. We're not trying to keep it to 20 minutes or 15, and not against people that do that. But I think the reason why people listen to podcasts isn't just for the material or like your message. It's to hear your thought process, to hear like conversation and thought development. And so when we would do our podcast, like, no, we don't have it all figured out. We have a topic, a discussion, and we would start discussing it and going back and forth. And then sometimes someone's mind would change or something else, some other thought or point to discuss came into fruition halfway through the podcast because talking about A, B, and C led to D led to this. And like before you know it, there's just other topics that was like, man, I'm so glad we just sat down and spoke about it because these 3 points that came from that weren't even discussed yet. And they're better than the original topics, but you can't really get to those until you just sit down and break some bread and just let it go. So we don't have any time limits or restrictions. We don't try to overly develop a message. You know, we have a couple bullet points that we want to discuss, as you guys can see, right? Like a couple bullet points that we want to discuss, and then sometimes certain bullet points don't get hit, but other ones do, and it grows. But what we wanted to do was just like, hey man, let's just grow and let's figure out like our own vibe, our own execution, and let's not put any limitations or restrictions or just any like pre notions of like what it's supposed to be. Like just because someone else was 20 minutes didn't mean we got to be 20 minutes or no, let's just be what we're going to be and let it have its own identity and its own brand and its own culture, and we'll gain our own audience for people that want to listen to it. And man, skipping forward a little bit of ahead, like we held our own content, then we started having guests, and this is where we get into the monetization because it's like, we don't have sponsorships. We've declined sponsorships. We don't do them.
You don't have
not saying don't do them.
There's no YouTube pay per listen program.
And
through
like
iTunes.
we'll get up to 30,000 downloads an episode on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play, and we'll get like half of you on YouTube. We don't mess with our YouTube yet. That's kind of a long play.
1% on YouTube. Yeah, if you guys are listeing, come over to our YouTube channel. We are growing it.
Yeah. But we haven't really messed with that like we've messed with our real estate one. We're going to start giving that some more time this year. But that was more of a long play of just making sure we had it. But, you know, so not saying don't do sponsorships. I'm not saying that at all. But we just want to keep the integrity of what we were doing. But
at least early on, I would say do not do sponsorships early on.
No.
Yeah.
No, but, you know, where we've monetized is like the relationships of people we've had on has grown our network and our business success exponentially. And it was because like, yeah, man, people like being on podcasts. It also gives you an opportunity to just meet a lot more people. You know, like we had Greg McDaniel on our podcast after we were on his. He introduces us to someone. Those guys happen to be ninjas at YouTube. We were doing a ton of social media content. They were like, hey, that talent and what you guys are already doing should be over here. Yeah, let's have a conversation. we ended up doing that and like growing a YouTube channel. Like now we're teamed up with those guys at EXP and you know, we're growing our brand just as much as they're growing their brand and doing our thing. And like, man, that was life-altering decision. And when we decided to make that decision, it was actually just before COVID when we decided to make the switch, right? And like, hey, we're doing this. And we started diving into YouTube. And then right when we started getting into YouTube, COVID hit. And we, you know, and it was like, hey, so, and that was an opportunity to like not do YouTube of like, oh, should you go back to the safe side? Should you just keep doing what you're doing?
People are going to be moving it all.
Keep talking to your team.
Yeah.
Nope. And it was like, hey, all we do know is people are going to be at home. And we've got to still be advisors, and we've got to still do a great job at just making sure that we're executing for people who are moving here, moving away from here, whatever it may be. So we didn't run from it. We went into the storm, and we literally created that project. And it was like, hey, during COVID, it was like, hey, dude, we show up for work every day, right? So we were working out of my basement at that time. We got our workouts in every day. We showed up every day. We were committed every day, and we grew that. And that was a huge pivot for us during COVID. That's been life-altering, man. It's been a blessing, but it all came from having those guys on our podcast.
And, man, that reminds me of a kind of like a Diesel Day moment in real life to where you and I, we didn't even acknowledge that the world was shut down, and you and I continued showing up every day. We never had a conversation about, hey, should we just keep a little distance? Should we just keep the families? Like, you know, you and I kind of had an unspoken mutual agreement that, hey, we're individually not going to go out and expose ourselves to weird, unnecessary
shit. We don't go out anyway.
Like, I stopped going to jiu-jitsu. Like, I know that things were shut down, but there's also like underground things going on.
And then jiu-jitsu got, underground stuff. Like I didn't go to any gyms. I built out my garage.
So we both kind of like unspokenly, didn't even have to ask each other, just kind of like respectfully, but man, you and I fucking showed up every single day. We didn't miss one single day of lockdown. We're like, hey, should we just not? Nope. But we didn't even acknowledge it either. We just, hey, Diesel Day, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was huge, and you know, so one of the caveats is with real estate, you don't have to be around a lot of people. You're looking at, you know, 1 or 2 people that are going to go look at some homes and things like that. So you can wear your mask or you can keep your social distancing or whatever you felt was going to make you safe, or whether you liked it or not. There was some guidelines with real estate. We did get shut down, I think, for like a week or 2 where they just, you could still see the home, but you had to submit an offer and your offer had to win before you could see it. And then once you saw it, if you didn't like it, you could file a contract just like any other phase. It was, but dude, we just kept writing. But people are lazy. Agents were lazy and weren't writing offers on homes. You and I were like,
they weren't going out.
They weren't even going out. But you and I was like, yeah, that's fine. We can. Oh, you guys really like it? We'll just write the offer. Yeah. So we just, that added workload, we didn't let it phase us. We just kept doing the work. We'd see the home. They ended up loving it anyway. All good. And then like a couple months in, we're like, dude, we're actually gaining traction. We're picking up. Like, all right, well, let's keep being safe. Let's keep adhering to real estate guidelines, whether you like it or not. That's just what it needs to be. And just comforts of clients. Some clients were certain ways. Some clients were a little bit more protective. Doesn't matter. They're your client. Make them comfortable, right? And be in it for them. And then there's, you know, still adhere to guidelines, but it kept growing and we kept tripling down on our channel and teaching other people on our team on how to do that and sharing it. But again, man, like it all came from that, right? So then
all came from our podcast.
All came from a podcast. Yeah. The original relationships of the guys that we decided to team up with and grow with, and now we're doing a lot of cool stuff. We're gonna end up doing events with those guys. Super cool dudes, Jesse and Jackson, good dudes, and we're so much different than them. Like we've got other value adds that they don't. They have some that we don't. But what's cool is like between the 4 of us, no egos. Like everyone is just super cool with what they do. And now instead of like being different, we're just gonna create a lot of training and a lot of events together and let everybody speak to their lane and be that subject matter expert. And we're going to attack this as a team, right? Which is awesome, man. I'm super stoked for that. But started from a podcast. We kept growing, kept having more success, you know, with real estate, kept talking about that more. And I was on the sidelines, like reaching out on Instagram. My Instagram started growing more. So I was reaching out and networking with other people to have them on the podcast. So that was cool. And we've had a lot of close friends. I think that's what's been fun, man, is like we have a lot of, you know, we talk about Brian Shontosh. We've had Alex Chapman. We've had some other folks on where we actually learned a lot more about them. Like I've known some of these guys for years, but having them on the podcast, we got to hear more about Alex's business, more about Tosh's world and Tosh's business and what he's up to. And because just the nature of someone coming on, they're expecting questions. They're expecting conversation versus when you're just hanging out with someone. You just ask 20 questions about their business? Like, no, right? So
we had Eric Wood on last week, and he made a comment that I still think about. I mean, a whole week later, so I've thought about it frequently.
So you're thinking about another guy.
And he goes, I think about you first. Yeah. He goes, man, we've been talking an hour. He goes, I promise you guys know me more than a lot of my friends who've known me for 10 years.
But the nature of the podcast, like you're expecting conversations, you're expecting to get personal, you're expecting to open up and like, hey, if I'm agreeing to go on a podcast, I want to be a value add. I want to go and I want to pour into that audience the best that I can and give them something to take away, right? Man, and that's so cool. And so it kept rolling, and then we had Andy Frisella on, we've had Sal Frisella on.
Iron Cowboy
was on.
Yeah.
And he, like, took the thought right out. I was like taking a breath.
Man.
Like he said it. He's a stud, and like, guess how we met these guys? Well, I've been watching Iron Cowboy for years. Him and I would message every once in a while on Instagram. And then one day I just, like, hey, man, I just love what you're doing. I've bought your supplements before and support what you're doing. And, hey, here's what we do. No stress, but, man, would you ever want to come on our podcast and chat? He's like, absolutely, dude. Let's rock and roll. Like, and because it's through Zoom and stuff, right? Like, and we updated some of our programs where we could have somebody on Zoom that still look really good. It just expanded because the guy can sit at his house and give us 30 minutes to an hour, and it's all good. And we had, and here's a super important point too. Like when we talk about the relationship, so a big question I get is like, hey, how did you guys get Andy Frisella on your fucking podcast? And I just say, well, I emailed him. They go, what? I go, well, yeah, on his website there's an option like, think Andy would be a good fit for your podcast? Like,
yep.
Yes. Email.
Yes,
so it's like, really? Like, is that easy? Like, yes and no. I saw that, and I didn't do it for a long time. Same thing with like the Ben Newman. Ben Newman was on. I met him years ago. Didn't ask him to be on for a long time, so let me explain these things. And this is where like you have to respect guys' level of success, and where you can't just go shooting off at the mouth, inviting everybody and their fucking mom to your podcast, expecting someone to just say yes to you. But when I emailed Andy, I was able to talk about like my military career and government stuff and police stuff. And then I said, hey, here's how it's translated into business. Here's our accomplishments in business. And I was able to mention being in the top 0.5% for Berkshire Hathaway. And here's where we've really translated this, man. And hey, we're big fans of yours. We've utilized a lot of like what you say, and we've incorporated it into our business. And then here's how successful we are. And man, we would love to have you on to speak about that more. Well, his wife, she's the one that gets the like the emails and stuff. And a couple weeks later, she goes, hey, I've dug into you, and you check out. Cool. Yeah, he'd love to have you. And cool. So we had him. And after right as the show was ending, he was like, hey, you guys are just cool motherfuckers, man. Like, hey, you guys did a great job on the podcast, and you guys just seem like good dudes. I want to have you on mine. And that's just a testament to Andy being such a good dude, wanting to spread the love. But he did say, once we showed up to St. Louis to be on his, he's like, guys, I'm on a lot of podcasts, but not a lot of them are very good. Right. But like we had put the time and effort into like holding a good podcast. So by the time a guy like him is on, we're prepared, and we had enough success where there's just context to even speak. And then, we were able to pull more out of Andy than most people. Well, it's because we had done work, man. Like when you speak that language of entrepreneurship and the real grind, man, it's like there's just going to be a great vibe on the show, and it's going to bleed into like great questions. And we talked about depression and like the not so fun shit. And you know how you know that shit as an entrepreneur? Because you done been through it. You don't talk about the high. Hey, Andy, tell me how you hustle. Fake.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't know what else to speak to unless like you've bled for that shit. Right. And so we had that bond, all three of us on the show. And, so he invites us out. Backtracking a little bit, the whole Ben Newman thing. So Ben Newman is like your lead performance mindset coach for Alabama football, Kansas State, half the NFL, Major League Baseball, like Gandhi, everybody, dude, like politicians, and phenomenal guy. I was on a phone call with him through Gavin Ekstrom. When Gavin Ekstrom heard we hit top 1%, he's a close buddy of ours. And he's like, dude, you're like this Jocko in real estate. Like, I got to introduce you to a friend of mine. He used to be in, mortgages and financial advisement. And now he's this for all these people around the world and sports. And you got to meet him because you're like this Jocko in real estate. And so he calls his cell phone number, and Ben answers, and he's like, hey, what's up? And hey, man, how you doing? Like, we had just hit 1%. And he's like, hey, man, that's great. Like, hey, what's your Instagram? He's like, hey, I'll throw you a follow, and got my eye on you. Hey, keep doing good things. That was it. He wasn't offering me a stage to speak on. He wasn't offering me shit. He's just like,
nor were you asking for anything.
Nor was I fucking asking for it. But I also knew like, hey, if he's gonna watch, he'll be around. Like, I'll be around. And the introduction was great. So we started following each other on Instagram, and we'd hit each other up like once a month. It was like, hey, like I'd say something on one of his posts, or he'd say something back, or if he didn't get back to me right away, he'd go, hey, man, sorry for the delay, but no, it sounds great. It sounds like you guys are killing it, and keep doing your thing. And, and then I told him and he's good friends with Andy Frisella. So then when he was on ours, I told Ben about it. Hey, man, give it a listen. We'd just love to hear some feedback. But we had Andy Frisella, and he's like, oh, great, cool. And hey, man, he invited us out once we were on his. Hey, we were on Andy's, and like that was substantial for us when we were on Andy Frisella's Real AF podcast. And it wasn't until then where I just said, hey, Ben, man, we've been, chatting for years. I know you say you get a little bit more time when it's not football season. I feel like we've hit some good accomplishments, and man, we would love to have you on the podcast. And I feel like we're at a place with business where your message will be well received. And he just thought that was cool. He thought the etiquette behind me just not asking him right away because I'm going after his name to be on. Like I felt like we had to earn that.
Yeah.
So there is some etiquette there, but but if you look at like the the scale of it, like as we kept earning more doors started opening up, and well, so here's the deal. Now I'm on Ben's speaking team, right? Like I saw Ben privately for a week, and he pulled the curtain back on his entire business. So we're going to be taking that material and that approach into throwing real estate events. In addition to that, he also invited me to be on his speaking team, right? So now I'll be speaking outside the scope of real estate in addition to what we're going to throw in real estate. Sounds like it got monetized.
Sure does.
Right? So it's man, it's not just that quick buck of like, oh, I need a sponsorship.
Yeah.
To like say, hey, eat Lunchables. It's like, oh, I'll get a couple $100. That, I'm not saying that you can't make it that, yes, but more importantly was just the integrity behind what we wanted to do, the quality on how we wanted to do it, and then the relationships and the doors that opened for us along the way. But then just being true to those relationships and making sure that we were also prepared and we were a value add for them as well, and we weren't just chasing them for their name to be on our show.
For you and I think one thing that you and I just have a unique perspective on that benefits us so huge is you and I are never looking for this immediate direct ROI.
No.
Like, and I don't know if that comes for me. I think I learned that through fitness, to where
mine's ego.
For me, like I just understand that in fitness, like, man, my goals are 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to go to the gym and then turn around and have results. I'm just used to like the act of doing something with seemingly no return over a long period of time. And then you look back and you're like, holy shit, look at everything I got from that. Explain ego.
Mine's ego. Like when I got into real estate, and where I started, and I was only there for a short term, but they were very big on like Zillow leads, Realtor.com leads. So you're doing that, but I wanted to build my own. I wanted to build my own network and be my own value add. I just didn't want to show up somewhere and feel like somebody was my boss. Not because I'm against bosses or against anyone having a boss. That's just not what I was in it for. And they also, like their model, you just weren't going to own a team or anything there, right? So very quickly, after crushing a couple deals, like one was a Zillow person. Everybody else was my own sphere. So I started catching on it like, hey, I'm doing like, and I had learned a lot through when I was at that fitness company, Fit Republic. Like my cousin Reese was our videographer, and we were already good at like storytelling and doing videography and some cool stuff. So I already had some ideology on like how I wanted to approach real estate. And so, that's when you and I kind of started linking up together. And when I branched away from that brokerage, I learned that, other brokerages don't have leads unless you're on a team. And not that I was looking for them, but then I started learning like, all these lenders like buy realtors leads and this and that. And I was like, nah, man, like I want the leverage. Yep. So maybe it's egotistical. I don't know. But like, I just wanted to build my own business and have my own sustainability.
It's called smart business.
But I just didn't want to owe anybody shit. Yeah. I wanted to work with whatever lender I chose because they were really fucking good at what they did. Not because I was obligated to them because they were spending money so I can cold call people at dinner and piss them off. I wanted to build my own sustainable business and go hunt for myself. So, I think that's where like, man, maybe it's pride, maybe it's ego, but I think in that lane, it's okay to have
it's like, smart business is what
I'm okay with like the humbleness and like I know my audience. I know when to shut my mouth. I know how to be humble. And if like people that know me, man, they know my intent is huge and they know I have a big heart and they know I care and they know like I do everything I can for people, So if you think that it's just ego, like you're probably just at a certain distance from me and you don't know me that well. But I do think it's okay to have a healthy level of like ego or pride that you want to go build something for yourself. And I'm not tearing everybody else down or talking shit to other people that do it differently. It was a me thing. It was big, but man, it speaks volume. But so let me bleed that into the podcast. I mean, like because of how substantial we started solidifying our business and our team, we didn't need money from our podcast. We weren't getting into podcasting for the business of it. It was fun. It was engaging. We got to learn a ton from other people that were coming onto the show. Once they were coming on the show, we also got to pour into people because it's long form content. So we got to speak for the first time. Everything we were doing that was working, we got to just have a voice for ourselves and start expressing what was working. We started building our own fan base. Then people start coming on, but we were prepared for that. But our intent was pure because we weren't just trying to ride their name to grow a podcast to make a buck. Our real estate company was our backbone. This was something that was extra, and like now it's definitely monetized, you know, like as far as like where it's taking us in business. But it was never like the intent was pure, and it was truly just the eagerness of two business dudes that have fucking grinded, that are excited to talk to other grinders and hear their day $1 story and where they're at now and everything in the interim. It was just pure curiosity and eagerness to give people a great show to be on, but then just, man, let our audience hear these people's value add. But then more times than not, you and I are also taking those lessons learned and the things that people have talked about on our podcast, and we've taken that for ourselves and ran with it.
Man, and let's turn that into a word of warning in case you're trying to come into the podcasting world without those intentions, right?
Yeah.
If this is not,
it's fucking hard. It takes a long time to get to where we're at with downloads.
You don't,
and we're not the biggest.
You just don't get paid on podcasts. Like, it's not like YouTube where it's like, oh, hey, cool, we can monetize and people can run ads and then you get paid per views. And it's like, yeah, there are some people where it's like, you can create a channel on YouTube in a niche and you're going to get views and you can get paid. Podcasts don't work that way.
No,
not at all, guys. So if you're coming into this to like make money, not the way to do it, right?
No, and like, even if you get a couple sponsorships, if you're not getting downloads and whatnot, like,
why would someone sponsor you?
Yeah.
You have to get to a point to where you're getting hundreds of thousands of downloads, or at least tens of thousands.
There's some at the micro, like 4 to 5 downloads. Like you start,
but then you're getting paid about $100.
I don't know. I mean, but again, it's like
not even $100 an episode.
But let's flip this. Take the podcasting out of it. If you're coming into real estate because you can make a lot of money, yes. But because like if that's your reason up front, it's so hard. And you got to be so great and dive in and commit so hard to actually make the money you're thinking of. I don't know if you're going to last.
The same reason you don't go to the gym for a 6-pack.
Right.
Good fucking luck. Good fucking luck.
Right. There's just got to be more to it. Like, hey, could you find more to it along the way? So if your initial thing is the financial side, I'm not against that. Like real estate has a huge ceiling, whether it's investment or building a team, like there's a huge ceiling. So if that's one of your strong motivators, that's okay. But you also got to love being of service and helping people and being committed because it's long hours and it's late hours. And there's a lot of commitment that you got to do to put yourself and you come last.
And understand it's going to take a long time again. Come back into fitness, man. I knew day one of real estate because I was coming out of fitness already like 5 years minimum before you're shit, you know, and it's like, oh, fuck, here we are, you know?
No, it's true, but it's, you know, it's fun to just come on here. I know we're getting long-winded. I was going to keep it at 30, and we're clearly not at 30.
Hence why we have a podcast.
Yeah, but I don't want to, like...
Guy mowing your lawn, you're welcome.
Yeah, but the biggest thing was, like, you know, it's a topic of discussion now, and now that it's popular, Joe Rogan makes $100 million with Spotify, a lot of, you know, I think a lot of them are going to fade because, it's not what you think, and there's a lot more commitment. But the bottom line is whether it's podcasting, you know, I love how it enhances a business. I love when you can have a foundation to build. Like we built our real estate company and we had a foundation, and then the podcast was an extension of it where we could share our stories, share our success, but then invite other people to share their stories and their success on the podcast, which is why we didn't go real estate specific right away. We just wanted to hear people, and like we talk about this all the time in real estate, about how important it is to be a marketer and a brand builder. And like, yeah, you have an emphasis in real estate, but your degree is in brand, is in marketing, especially nowadays. So as much as like real estate's fun and we love it and we're going to start doing that secondary podcast, we didn't want to narrow it down to just realtors at the very beginning, because it's like, hey, if we're a brand or if we're marketers or whatnot, like that's the new era, regardless of like what industry you're in, why don't we just get other influencers and entrepreneurs that are legit onto the show? Because I promise you, a lot of what Andy Frisella talks about applies to any business.
All of it. Yeah.
Fuck, man. Like we've been listening to that guy for years, right? Yeah. So especially you. Yeah. I found out about him, his like I knew about Andy because of the fitness world. I didn't know he had a podcast until you mentioned it years ago. So awesome. So it was fun to like just give people a great perspective and like, now that we're going to do this real estate specific podcast, a lot of it, hey, if you're not in real estate, I still suggest you listen to it if you're building a brand or a business or you're an influencer, because a lot of it will apply. It'll just have an emphasis on real estate, but it's just fun to like shed some light and just show people like what it is. But I still recommend like, I guess we can't speak to our business is not podcasting. We have one, right? And it does contribute to our business, but I don't know how to grow it of just by itself, right? So I can't speak to that. But man, if you don't have one, but you have a business that you love, don't necessarily negate a podcast or a YouTube channel or other stuff because you think that, well, I'm a realtor or I'm a general contractor or I'm this or I'm that. So you think that like maybe podcasting doesn't apply to you because now it's so popular, it just seems like a business in itself. Hey, there's a huge way it can contribute to your business, right? So, man, I would keep an open mind on it, but then also just realize you got to be consistent. It's got to be a great product. So how you run your other businesses, you still have to approach this like it's that.
Man, and my last point, I want to emphasize the dichotomy of speed and patience. And that, for you and I, that's always a recurring theme. We, learn being patient in the right areas, but then having speed in the right areas.
It's brilliant that you say that, Eli, because I just posted on my fucking Instagram about that today where I said, I don't care if it takes me 10 years, just as long as there's no wasted time along the way, right? Like,
that's a perfect way to put it.
And what I mean is like, I don't need everything to happen overnight. It can take 10 years, but like if it could have taken 5, but there's a lot of wasted time along the way. So what got accomplished in 10 could have been 5. Like, yeah, that's a bummer. So I'm okay with however long something should take. But then when I look back at it, it's like, hey, was there any wasted time? Like were we as proficient as possible? And if you're as proficient as possible and you execute to the best of your ability for your ability in those moments along the way, and then it took 10 years, sounds like you were right on time.
Yep.
But if you wasted time, then maybe you're not. So for me, it's like we're super patient in this game. We love building our brand. We love helping everybody else build their brand. And yeah, man, like this is the other thing that like I have a question with people for. It's like you're so passionate about being an influencer or building a brand or whatever it may be, like that you could do this the rest of your life, but like 6 months into it, you want to quit. Or 6 months into it, like you're not where you want to be. So it's not worth it. It's like, man, you want to do this forever, but you're already willing to quit. And you also got to understand, like, when you have a business like real estate where the ceiling is so high, you're not going to get there in a year. No. Like, it's going to take you a long time, but, like, are you in it? And whatever that goal is, I want to make $10 million a year. Cool. But guess what? Along the way, your $500,000-$600,000 a year is pretty awesome. Right? Like, it's not just accomplishing that goal.
Most people saying that, they ain't even making $100,000 a year.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Right? But we speak to what we can speak to. And but it's been great, man. But no, like I can't express enough when I say start a fucking podcast. Like, have quality, have something to speak to, have integrity, put your pride and your stamp on it and approach it the right way, but also understand, like, hey, just because podcasting isn't necessarily your business does not mean it's not going to contribute to the overall business that you have. Or better yet, look at Joe Rogan. It wasn't his business. He was just doing it to talk to friends and do other stuff, but then it turned into a very lucrative business, right? Yeah. So it doesn't mean that what was not a business by itself and was contributing to what you're doing could eventually turn into something. But either way, like, I think you guys understand what I'm getting at. If you've been thinking about it, if obviously you're thinking about it. If you're listening to them, maybe you think it could be something for you. Man, fucking get after it and just plug away and see what it turns into for yourself. But realize there's so much more than just the monetization on the surface of downloads and sponsorships where it could just extraordinarily benefit your life that you're probably not thinking of. And when you start seeing it through that lens, hopefully that makes you commit and just, man, get fucking going.
I like it.
I like you.
On that note,
right on.
I like you.
Day $1.0.
Such an amazing podcast, Will. You're just such a good leader, and
oh, you're so articulate right now, bro.
So articulate.
You're only doing that
just throwing you some
because
love.
Like dudes, and I don't know, dude. They have to be doing it because of that. And
of course they are.
Let me say this though. I'm not saying that because you're not brilliant or you're not super great at what you do. Like, super. So I guess what I was really trying to say was, like, sometimes guys that we know will say that to me because they're assuming that you would love more of the limelight, and I'm like not giving it to you. And what I would love to tell them is, like, hey, I understand because of your limited view why you might think that. It could not be further from the truth. That's not what he fucking wants. Matter of fact, like, if I don't uphold a certain level of communication or conversation on this or on everything else that we do, it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, no.
Motherfucker.
Not at all.
But, like, then if I say that, right, then it's like, oh, here's fucking Will, right? Like, fucking. So I just go, yeah, cool. And I just like
that's hilarious.
go
Just
home
takes
and,
it on
like,
to me later.
I go home and like choke voodoo dolls and shit at home.
Oh shit, that's
Oh, man,
hilarious.
but it's all good. They also love busting my balls, which is fun.
They do.
But, no, man,
They do.
it's been a great time, and it's fun to kind of like reflect back on the podcast and everything that's going on.
So we got some ecstasy to do, I think. It's been a few years. It's been a few years. Might have to.
Friday.
Ooh. Why can't Friday?
I'm in Idaho.
Yep. Darn it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Hey, if you guys have not checked out our YouTube channel, go to YouTube. Hit Day 1 $0. You'll see us there. Leave a comment. Like it if you like it. Hit the subscribe button.
There you go.
You guys know the drill. All right. We'll see you later, guys.
Take care.
Day 1 $0.
Out.
I'ma sip it on down and turn it up. Southbound and we trailblazing, yeah, bud. And the posse dirty, filthy like a spit cup. Dropping bombs out the gate, bringing big guns. Raw records, we the stake, we the A1. Speak up and we know where we came from. Welcome to the posse, let me hear you long cut. A little whiskey on the tongue and some long cut. I'ma slip it on down and turn it up. Southbound and we trailblazing, yeah, bud. And the posse dirty, filthy like a spit cup. Dropping bombs at the gate.